Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
El tiempo para la verdad es patrocinado por la Clínica Dental Bernard Fialkoff DDS, con especialidades en implantes dentales, láser periodontal, cirugía cosmética. Visítanos en el 5603 de la 214 Street, Bayside, New York, con el teléfono 718-229-3838. Clínica Dental Bernard Fialkoff.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to A Time for Truth show. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, and it's a pleasure to be back with you again today. And tonight's show comes out of our theme song, Doing Everything You Got to Make It Happen. And that's exactly the guest that we have on this show. And Buddha, let's immediately put her pictures up and introduce Mayor Cashenna A. Cross, a decorated retired veteran of the U.S. Air Force and an accomplished Department of Defense investigator and community leader with more than 30 years of experience in government, planning, project management, and philanthropy. There you see her. As the mayor of Glenarden, Maryland, a city on the move, she is only the third woman mayor in the city's 82-year history. And there you see the logo and motto and symbol of her great city. She's a wife and a mother of two, championing the transformative impact of a strong spiritual family and community support system. Cashenna is an active member of the Woodstream Church and lives by the motto, moving the mission forward. That veteran's hat looks great on her. She served the United States Air Force through Detachment 425 ROTC program in Mississippi State University, where she started, and became a commissioned intelligence officer serving the world's greatest Air Force. The mayor commanded at the highest level of U.S. national security, receiving countless defense meritorious and joint service awards and accolades from the Department of Defense, as well as accommodations from the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. Mayor Cross leads actions to address lack, depression, emotional health, safety, security, and overall wellness in all our communities. She received the President Joe Biden Presidential Lifetime Achievement Volunteer Service Medal Award. And she's worked with Jonah House, a faith-based community-centered concept of nonviolence, resistance, and community. And with Bridge Center at Adams House, an interagency collaboration between the Health Department, the Department of Corrections, the Department of Social Services, the Department of Family Services, and the U.S. Attorney Office for the state of Maryland, along with other community-based partners, all providing holistic and complete assistance to residents re-entering the community, especially those formerly incarcerated who need our help the most, and veterans coming back from war who need to reincorporate, and youth 18 to 25 years old who go the wrong way. And all this to train community stability. The mayor promotes employment, training, community volunteer actions to break the cycle of recidivism. She is a God-purposed people's champion and philanthropist, preventing violence and abusive behavior, and more importantly, before it begins. And Engineer Buddha, if you will, let's bring her up live and bid a warm welcome to Mayor Cross. Thank you so much for taking the time, Mayor. Welcome to our show.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning from wherever you're watching. This is an awesome opportunity, and I am grateful, Doctor, for the opportunity that you have given us to speak on such a worthy platform, changing and evolving our communities.
Well, you know what? Since I met you with one of my favorite friends, good friends, Globetrotter Robert Hunter, and I heard you speaking, and I heard your platform, I said, this is one human being we want to have on a Time for Truth show, because you've gone through so much. So I want to get right to the show and utilize our time well. What were your dreams when you were a young girl?
Well, I was 9 years old, and it's interesting that you asked this question because I don't get to say it very often, but I wanted to be an attorney and I wanted to see the world. Very specific I was as a young kid. And one of the things that I asked, when I stated that, is that I'd like to see the world with my husband. And ironically, I was able to be selected for Tops in Blue, which is Air Force Worldwide Entertaining. And it's part of the Morale and Welfare Recreation, MWR. Actually, I started dating the audio director, and eventually we became husband and wife. So I knew right away when he showed up exactly that prayer from a 9-year-old kid on the playground in elementary school, that was my prayers being answered. So I wanted to see the world. I now have about 27 countries to our credit. And our 2 daughters, lovely daughters, ages 10 and 13, LeClaire and Zafira, my husband Mario, and I, they have seen 18 countries. So I do believe that taking our children to the world, to see the world outside of their back door, exposes a level of experience in them that only the world can teach. And the growth and prosperity across the world has always intrigued me, and it's something that I knew I wanted to give to my daughters. So they are frequent travelers. Cruise ships is the way to go for us. But again, we will take our next trip next year as we are journeying into Israel, Egypt, and Jordan as our next journey. So that's what were my 2 dreams, to see the world and to become an attorney. Now, I haven't become an attorney just yet by paper, though I would always tell any youth out there that if you look at your life, a lot of it is not documented in paper, but it is documented in works and deed. I've had my fair share being in the United States Air Force and advocating for those that couldn't speak for themselves, standing in the gap, lobbying as well, researching, pulling together my case for whatever type of project we were on at that time. And if I account for the amount of time that it would take for you in a court case to argue or defense, I think I've had my fair share of opportunities of being an attorney. The next thing to do would be to put the paper on the wall.
Well, you know what? It's very interesting. There's a friend of mine who's a rabbi, and one day he said to me, Doc, you're a rabbi. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, well, a rabbi is one who helps. So I'm going to take his lead, and I'm going to say something to you, Mayor, that you already are an attorney, because an attorney sets things straight, makes the world a better place, and resolves conflict. And that's exactly what you're doing. So whether or not somebody will give you the paper on tonight's show, we'll recognize you. And from a Time for Truth show, say, you know, Mayor Cross JD, you're now an attorney.
Well, to God be the glory. As we press hard, I will say this, that I do acknowledge that the greatest sum total of all the works that you have done will ultimately show you your purpose. And I teach that to our young folks in the city of Glenarden, but also my own, that your purpose is very much so seen in the works that you put on the ground. That's why it's very important to be astutely aware of the works that you're putting on the ground. It tells you what your energy is most targeted towards. And that target gives you really the values of life, which is that purpose that we all so desperately seek to be a part of the great plan.
Absolutely. And you know what? You were in the Air Force, you were in intelligence, you did unbelievably well. And then how is it that then you transition and you say, okay, I'm going to run for mayor now?
You know, I retired from the Defense Intelligence Agency in 2018. And when I came through, again, having gone through all these countries and all these places, we found ourselves actually in a homeless situation. When we came through, the house that we were going to purchase in Virginia actually fell through. And let me tell you how divine intervention works. We ended up staying in a hotel for just about 3 months. And the Air Force threatened to turn 36,000 pounds of household goods and equipment into personal storage. And we were in a very interesting place in our life. My husband was deployed to Iraq as a government civilian, supporting his country. And I was here with 2 young babies, one not quite in school and one in elementary school. And I will never forget the colleagues that I worked with and how they were so supportive and how they drove towards helping me find the right real estate company who showed me 24 houses in a weekend. And she finally said, I know the perfect place for you. It is a new development in a city called Glenarden. And I said, I remember very vividly saying, Glenarden, what a beautiful name. It's like a garden, right? And it's in the name, Glenarden. So it's a place of birth, a renewal, of strength, of energy. And I said, well, take me to it. And we went, and literally 3 houses later, we signed that day for the home that we're staying in now. When I moved into Glenarden, I was met with a legacy of the really one of the first Black African American incorporated cities in the state of Maryland in 1939. And as an incorporated city, did profound things that paved the way for many more of gorgeous Prince George's 27 municipalities to birth. And it has been just a journey and a story that I enveloped and embraced so truthfully. My goodness, I grew up in Mississippi around the campfire with my mom and dad telling us the stories, and I leaned on every word that they said. Well, Glenarden reminds me of home, and so I knew I was home when we bought our home here. I even signed for my husband with power of attorney, so he trusted me enough to put us in our place of residence. So how did I get to mayor from there? When I met the people, and I saw the challenges and the growth opportunities in the city. When I looked into my children's future and I saw that 3rd generation, I knew that the Air Force and life itself had prepared me with the knowledge, the talent, and the skill sets to do great things for a community that had essentially the greatest title in the world, a city on the move. And I considered every place that I've ever been and every opportunity, from project management to intelligence to research to planning to networks to being a systems network person to computers to finance even. And I said, this is an opportunity of growth and strength. And why not use the best of who you are to put goodness on the ground? I started making community partners with nonprofits, hence, Mr. Bobby Hunter, Dr. Gloria Crossland, and got involved with her with the Mr. DC pageant. Mr. DC is a male pageant, first of its kind that I'm aware of, which speaks specifically to volunteerism and philanthropy. And in doing all of that, I saw a need in our community. And that need spoke loud and clear to moving the mission forward. And that has been my staple from the moment I ran to move the mission forward. In a place where such progress had once thrived, the city was standing still. And I could not bear it. I could not bear it. My third generation cannot bear a city standing still. A city that had such promise was driving and leading the front in this county. So I ran for mayor to put the best of who I am on the ground.
You know what? I've got to say something, because I've had a lot of people on the show, and your energy level and really fluidity, amazing. I'm sure that Glenarden is very lucky and very satisfied and pleased with you as mayor, because you just imbue life, and there's something called endowing life, and you just imbue life, and I'm sure Glenarden is going to become, if it hasn't already, one of the most prosperous cities in America. But let's go on, because I know you've done so many things. I wanted to ask you, what were the targets or your reasons that when you briefed the Prince George's Chief of Police and the county-wide police chiefs on a project, Hope and Action Task Force, Community Assessments Committee, and Violence Prevention? What was it that, or what is it, or was it that you wanted to accomplish?
So the Prince George's Hope and Action Task Force is a very select task force that has, violence interrupters, which are essentially personnel who are still living and inside of that world of violence, which informs and provides our police chief as well as our county executive with information on where trouble may be brewing. It also involves essential community members from across the Prince George's County, across the 27 municipalities. The task force identifies ways to break through the evidence of disenfranchisement that's happening within our youth, but also to get out front of the gun violence and the tragedy that has befallen our youth. The ability of this county to address that head on is the reason why this task force was created. It's an anti-violence project. Hence, we're tied to Mr. Bobby Hunter with that. Anti-violence task force, which essentially creates a vehicle for our communities to evolve strategies. The key strategies that I propose as the chairman of the Community Assessments Committee is to address our family, to address our food deserts. Food deserts, as we know, if people cannot eat, then they will find other ways. To address the disenfranchisement in our youth, we're looking at our educational systems. There's been a tragic decrease in the amount of before and after school programming. When we grew up, most of that programming was free, offered as part of the state. This is not true today. Most of it is intramural sports, or it is sponsored by community members where parents have to pay. And that's one of the things that I am struggling with in our community also, is getting the proper funding to make those things available. The arts allow children to dream. We are looking at the development that's happening in our county. Great, wonderful development is happening. With development, though, comes changes in value systems. As people migrate across borders, that's something that has to be taken into account to make sure that the value systems coming into the county also edify the value that's already on the ground. And we have seen that that has been a big change agent in why we're having such an increase in violence. And then we are looking at this development. and how it is potentially on the cusp of increasing tax base, which, as you know, when the tax base increases in a town that's 83 plus years old, there may be those that may suffer from that tax base increase. So as we're looking at the community's assessment, we're looking at those increases and how they may be changing the value systems based on the seniorities of the communities not having the equity to be able to appropriately account that funding. And when that happens, if the children, the inheritances, isn't transferred properly, what you really have then is a lot of displacement across the county. So we are looking at that, those five top key for developing a strategy, understanding our our non-emergency, our 911, which is our emergency, and with our violence interrupters, helping us identify those target areas in our community that we must address now to save our future. We are taking back our communities, we're taking back our babies, and we are becoming an active and watchful participant in this community.
That's beautiful program, very complete and very thorough, excellent. And you know, it makes me very happy when I actually ask you the next question, because I see that you know, the intention that you approach things with, and the mindset, aside from your skill set, amazing. Is, you know, I was very happy to hear that along with the World Conference of Mayors, that you're going to be attending our November 30th Greater New York dental meeting drug education event, where mayors and dentists and professional athletes are going to form a coalition against this drug crisis, this drug malady that's besetting all the world, the country, the cities, the families, and our kids, most importantly. And so what I wanted to ask you is, as mayor, as a wife, a mother, why is it that you feel it's important for the dentists, the mayors, and the athletes to work together and to safeguard our communities?
It takes a family. It takes a community. We've heard this almost cliche. It takes a community. Well, it's true. And part of the success of Mayor Cashenna A. Cross thus far in a year of being mayor of the city of Glenarden has been extended partnerships inside and outside of our community. One thing I note is when something happens in one part of our county, it starts to permeate and fester throughout the other parts of the county. As it pertains to dental, consider it the same. Without dental hygiene, what happens? You get a cavity on one tooth, before long, it festers throughout the mouth. Proper care of dentistry, proper care of communities, it's all the same. It all requires deliberate attention. We recognize that substance abuse and drug addicts are a serious health issue. Forgive me. Addition. Forgive me. That word is killing me this evening. But if you are a drug addict, forgive us for crashing that word. But we are trying to promote, as with dentistry, early intervention and prevention. One of the things that, as I talk to several members of our community who are recovering drug addicts, one of the things that they highlight was a need to escape, a need to build a world of comfort, sometimes brought on by pain, mostly brought on by curiosity in our youth, and a sense of ownership and even rebellion. One of the things that we want to acknowledge that is that there are early onsets of this, and mental health and wellness was my first priority as mayor, coming 19, to address this disenfranchisement, not only in our youth, but in our seniors and across our community, where people were really coping with losing jobs or having stress. They could not get work. And with the supply chain even causing problems with our construction workers, we found ourselves with a lot of people turning to addiction. For me, why am I having trouble with it? Addictions, there we are. Turning to addictions to help cope with the struggles and the things that are happening in our everyday walking life. Y'all forgive me, I don't know why that word hit me today. But
Well,
recognizing
you're not going to
that,
say, Mayor, that word addiction, which is causing so much turmoil, so much destruction, it's a word that really has a lot of negative connotations. You're such a positive person. That word really is not part of your vocabulary. But, so let's go on. So the addiction is there, and
yes.
continue.
Okay, so there's a great deal of time put into the addictions that unfortunately require a neglect in other pieces of our body. It is a substance, and that substance has a chemical product, if you will, in the mental capacity to make rational decisions. And that's something that, we have to learn as a community, that when we find someone with a serious addiction, it is not something that we need to truly scorn as much as to understand the underlying root cause. And that's what you'll find is I am a positive person and I look at the root cause. Everything has a root cause. And the energy behind that would give the solution to, unfortunately, the person who's having to go through this. The challenge is to find ways in which we can heal. Drugs, neglect, dental hygiene, which is damaging our health. When our teeth are damaged, we don't have proper digestion. When we don't have proper digestion, we create other illnesses in our body, other free radicals like cancer and even lung disease, heart disease. Those things come, if you will, by, with, and through our mouths. That's why we're so desperately connected to proper hygiene, as well as we're so desperately connected to the root cause. The root cause is what we're addressing. In the state of Maryland, cannabis laws are now being considered and passed. Now, what we are considering has to have an equal and opposite reaction from the community. I will tell you that many people are looking at it from an economic gain, that economic gain to benefit, many folks that are looking to make a profit off of this. What we aren't really truly assessing, in my opinion, is those health benefits. And that's what you're talking to this evening, is the damage to our oral health is a damage to our common health overall. And we get everything from ulcers and sores in our throat and our mouth. Grinding of our teeth, by the way, disturbs our sleep. No sleep, then you're disturbing really your growth pattern in youth. That's why it's so dangerous when they are on various drugs, but also our focus. Our focus is what helps us decide and define. When I was 9 years old, I was focused. I knew what I wanted. And as we talked earlier, we were able to get those things because we maintained a level of focus. Sometimes you go left of center, but you can always regain focus. And that's something that it really requires us a greater attention, if you will, to all of our nutrition. And that's why dental hygiene is so important, primarily because we're looking at what we are intaking. And as the world becomes more health conscious because more impurities are placed in our food. Now, I grew up in Mississippi, as you stated, and I grew up on an 80-acre farm where we particularly raised all of our all of our food. My father was a hunter, so we ate off of the land. So a lot of my health and any of the deficiencies in our community's health from where my father was very minimum. We didn't have dental issues and we didn't go to the dentist a lot. I will admit that. But I grew up and I really only had two cavities my whole life because we ate off of the land. My mother was a wonderful cook, as most Southern women are. and we were able to support our community. So if you're asking me what is my target, it's unity. Unity in our community, that we care for our brothers, our sisters, we care for our others, we care for those that are helping us build a stronger community overall.
Well, Mayor, you know what? You are unbelievably comprehensive, inclusive, and you have such a wealth and a variety of knowledge. You brought everything in there. And first of all, I look forward to having you at the conference on November 29th with the athletes, with the dentists, with the drug educators, with the mayors. And to end off what you were saying, we were so correct that you didn't have that problem when you were young, but the NIH and the CDC have shown that when our kids are exposed to marijuana in their teenage years, their brains are irreversibly affected, their IQ is irreversibly affected, and these are scientific studies that make you wonder, economics, but at the consequence of what, and which is what you're bringing out, which is so true. Let's look at economics through health, positivity, energy, athletics, education, well-being, and we'll get economics too. So you know what? I look forward to having you there, and the whole World Conference of Mayors there, and the Globetrotters, and we're all going to make our community better. I want to thank you for being on the show, because unfortunately we've run out of time, and we probably had too good a time, but thank you for being on the show, Mayor.
Well, I thank you so much, Doctor. It's fantastic to meet you, and I look forward to seeing you in November. And again, for Bobby Hunter and what he's doing with the World Conference of Mayors and the churches across America, I can't speak enough about what we as a community will do to change the narrative. We are moving the mission forward, and that mission is successful communities thriving and not dying.
I am totally with you. Amen. 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 Hallelujah. And thank you so much, Mayor. And for those of you watching, let's take the mayor's lead. Let's take her energy. Let's change our world for the better. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great night.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet